In this episode, I'm going to sit down with Silvio Perez to discuss how he's made the transition into entrepreneurship not once, but twice, why he decided to leave Metadata in pursuit of his own consulting firm, and what advice he would give to you as a first-time entrepreneur. I'll see you in the episode. Hey Silvio, thank you so much for joining me on the Acronym Podcast. Very excited to have you on as a guest today.
Thank you so much for having me, Chris. I'm excited to jump in.
So you don't mind just to kind of kick things off, just give us a little bit of a background on yourself and what it is that you're currently doing.
Yeah, so a little bit of background on me. I am currently running my own consultancy, so just working with a handful of different B2B SaaS companies, but I'm really in the process of building my next venture, which is a full-blown digital advertising academy, teaching B2B marketers how to scale paid ads for free, regardless of skill level. And that's the whole future and kind of venture that I'm working on, and a lot of exciting stuff in terms of like building an LMS, creating learning experiences, and really just doing online education and SaaS, so kind of like ed tech, if you will, in another way, which is really exciting because a lot of folks will come to me because I create content on how to run ads, and they'll say, hey, Silvio, do you have a place you recommend to learn how to go run ads? And I'm just like, there's not one place I can really tell somebody definitively, like, hey, go there. They got you covered. You're going to learn everything you need to, especially for B2B, because most course providers in the ad world, it's like e-commerce, SMB, or they claim to make it B2B relevant, but it's like surface level. So huge need that I'm really excited to fill. And then just some context on me. 5 years ago, I was a broke college student, didn't have, any money. And I remember I was in school, I was actually pursuing finance. I was like following just my dad's path for me. I never really thought about it at the time growing up. I was really into like gaming, and I was like a semi-professional gamer. I used to stream on Twitch, and I've always been pretty competitive as a person, but I never really thought about like my career, my future. I was just kind of going with the motion, if you will. And long story short, in college, one of my cousins, he was a DJ, and he was DJing on the side. And he told me, he's like, hey, Silvio, I need help with these events. Do you mind, helping me out? And we'll split the money 50-50 and you can make some cash. And I was like, yeah, dude, for sure. I wasn't making any money at the time. And it was great. And we started doing gigs together. And lo and behold, before I knew it, I really gravitated towards the marketing and the business side of things. And he was very much the operations. So he would do the parties and the events. And then I was more so like working on our website, our pricing, our messaging, the sales, like handling the leads. And just like every business, naturally, the next logical question is, how do I get more customers, right? How do I acquire more leads? And I remember going to Google and searching Miami DJ near me in Google, and seeing these little ads pop up at the top of the page. At the time, I didn't even know that was a Google ad. And I found out that was a Google ad. And then before I knew it, I started figuring out how to run Google ads. And I was spending $10 a day on a credit card I couldn't pay, trying to make it work. And I'll never forget my first lead that converted into cash. It was a kid's Halloween party that I acquired for 89 cents, and it turned into $650 cash for 4 hours of work on the weekend. I'll never forget that feeling, cashing in that check. It was like, from that moment on, I've always been hooked on ads, and I truly see it as like a superpower that can allow people to take whatever idea they have, which is actually the mission of ad conversion, is to help people, scale their ideas profitably into the world through advertising. And I really I'm super passionate about it. But essentially, that's kind of how it all started. From there, switched my major to marketing. I went full in, and I was actually working for this one company at first. And the plan was, I'm going to work at this company, learn from other people who've been running ads, try to get as much experience as I can. And it was like the worst experience in the world. It was like I just started. I had barely any experience outside of my DJ business. And it was like, hey, Silvio, they were like this big gym in the US, and they had like different locations in different states. So Black Friday, New Year's is like a huge deal. And I joined in around October, and the biggest season was coming up down a couple months down the road. And long story short, I joined, and they're like, hey, here's your target CPA of $350. That's our goal. And here's $500K in budget. figure it out. If you have any questions, let me know. And long story short, I crashed and burned horrendously. I learned everything not to do. That's why I call it my master's degree. And I'll never forget going through that process. It was so painful because I think oftentimes people, they don't realize this, but no one goes to work. I mean, unless they're just like a really shitty employee, but for the most part, no one goes to work saying like, today's the day I'm going to fuck it all up. You know what I mean? Like today's, I'm just going to burn it all down. Like we go for the most part with good intentions and we want to do good work. But oftentimes you just don't know what you don't know. And yeah, long story short, it was terrible. In 3 months, I was not fired, but I beat them to it, if you will. Like it was coming. I'll never forget. I was like sitting in my cubicle and I was looking across and my manager had like this little window office in front of me. And I remember seeing the HR manager in her office, and then they just turned around and like pointed at my little cubicle. And I was like, okay, it's coming, So that happened, and it accelerated my path into entrepreneurship and freelancing. So from that experience, I didn't think I was I always knew I wanted to do my own thing, but I didn't think I was going to do it that fast. But after those 3 months, I was like, okay, I have like a 4-month runway in terms of savings to try to get something going here. And I just jumped right into trying to do freelancing. And I was doing Google Ads freelancing at first. That was the skill that I was going to monetize. And I was doing everything just to try to get my first couple customers. And it was like I could hear the clock ticking down because every single day, every single month that I did not get a customer and I didn't get any revenue, it was like a day closer to putting things on my credit card and going into debt. Yep. So that was my intro to entrepreneurship.
That's the thing that a lot of people don't think about when they make that jump in. Like you say, you have 4 months runway. The hardest thing to do when you make the jump is when you go from making a salary, making an income to making zero, because every month, let's say you have 4 months runway and your average, you have 20 grand, is 5 grand a month expenses. Every month you're losing 5 grand. That's really hard to do when you're first starting. And that's where, when I talk and I advise a lot of marketers who are looking to make that transition into entrepreneurship, like build up something on the side. Get to the point where your expenses are covered before you make the jump, because it makes that leap a lot less intimidating. And also, when you jump, if you don't get a customer in the first 2 months, you start to panic. Because I've been there, and you start to panic. It's terrifying. So you want to build up a little bit of an income before actually making that transition. So I'm curious, when you made the jump, you had 4 months runway. What happened? Did you get a customer in 4 months?
I did, thank God. And it was crazy. It was very stressful. So I mean, I went in as ignorant as you can be. I didn't have a niche. I didn't know, I didn't even realize the value of a niche. It was like spaghetti, spray and pray. Just if you have budget and you need help with Google Ads, like I'm going to help you, right? Mistake number one. And it was just, so actually the first customer that I got, I read this book called Fanatical Prospecting. And in the book, the author outlines this whole, I forget the word for it. He has a word for it. It's like your power hour or something like that, where it's basically where you cold call you make like 30 dials in an hour, and then you take a break and then you go back at it. So I actually got my first client through a cold call. So what I did was I was actually going after all these different podiatrist clinics, and because they do have insurance, but all of them also do like out of pocket. And I would send an email before, and then I would call, and because the receptionist is a gatekeeper, and they have to protect the doctor's time. So I would call, and then I would basically tell the receptionist, like, hey, I'm just following up with the doctor on the email I sent. He was expecting my response, which is like total bullshit. But, that was like the play in the beginning to get in. And it was terrible. Like, and then when I did finally get connected to the doctor, I'd be like, hey, Silvio, if you just give me 60 seconds, I want to it was like the most cringy, cold, spammy, like looking back at it now. But luckily enough, it worked. I got through to one doctor, and we're actually still friends to today. Fun fact. And I don't know, he took a chance on me, and that was my first client. And I was making $300 a month, which is not a lot, especially now. But at the time, it was just like the first win to get some life and like some assurance. And then from there, once you get your first customer, it's so much easier to get your second, your third, and it just kind of snowballs from there. But cold calling was the first customer that I got, but I definitely didn't stay cold calling. Eventually, I started to transition into Upwork.com, and that was what actually worked for me really well in the beginning through Upwork, because they already have people there that know they have a problem, and you can just show up, build a good profile. And then as you build reviews, it kind of scales with you over time. And to this day, I still have my Upwork profile. I don't use it anymore, but if I ever need it one day, God forbid, it's an asset that I have.
Yeah, I've had a lot of success on Upwork with finding prospects right when I was first starting out. I will say, I actually went a different route. I didn't try and build a fancy profile. I knew that, they were going to take 20% of all the fees and everything. I was like, I don't want to give up 20%. So instead, I went for businesses where I could find their contact information on the Upwork page or on the profile or on the job posting, and then I reached out to them and I cold called them, or I emailed them and I reached out and started up the conversation by saying, hey, I saw you had a job posting on Upwork. I'm sure you've been inundated with 50 unqualified prospects. Do you want to have a conversation, see how I might be able to help? And that was like a knife through butter. Like, it was just straight to the point, and you'd get on the conversation. If you could connect with people, that was usually a pretty good conversation. But yeah, I got my first, I think in the first 3 months, I got 2 clients from Upwork. Just when I needed to, you had to replace the lost income. I had to make that jump and had to bring some income in quickly. So I was like, right, Upwork is the place that I can go, and I know I can immediately find some clients.
And, to add stress to the matter, right? You have this limited runway. You have to make it work. You're close. It's even harder when like your close family and friends don't support you. So, I love my family, etc. But I had some folks that were not supportive, and it was like every single week they were just checking in with me like, hey, did you make any money yet? Did you make any money yet? Like, they were grilling me every single week. So for those listening, if you do want to make the jump and you're kind of fearful what others are going to think, fast forward to today. I'm grateful to say, my family's fully on board. They brag about me to like their friends and all this stuff. Like, oh, I always believed in you, and this and that. So don't let that stop you. At the end of the day, like, they want what's best for you. That's why they're concerned. For the most part, they mean it from a good place. And truthfully, you're seeing something that is not real yet, right? You're creating something from literally scratch. So just because you see it and you believe it doesn't mean other people do. And oftentimes people need evidence in order for them to actually start to believe in something. So if you are getting pushback in the beginning, don't worry. I don't stress it. Keep moving forward. Keep optimizing and improving. And then as you start to get wins, I promise you're going to start to see the tide will change over time. But you have to earn it. And that's something that a lot of people don't want to hear, but it's kind of required in the beginning.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And having the support system is very important with that. That's a huge element to why you can be successful. And if you find that you don't have it in your family or your friends or wherever it is, you have to go and find networks that you can really rely on and lean on when you do, have to have those conversations, or if you have those moments of self-doubt. I find a lot of success in communities like Pavilion or RevGenius or even LinkedIn to some extent. Getting a membership to those communities for me was a huge advantage when it came to being able to connect with like-minded individuals, and then become a thought leader in those communities allows you to obviously at some point attract clients, and it goes full circle as you go through that. But that's one of the big takeaways that I had, is building a community as early and a network as early as possible allows you to have those moments where you're struggling, when you can have a conversation with a friend that does understand it or has been through that before, and that can be what you need to keep pushing forward.
1,000% agree. I didn't do that. Truthfully, even to this day, I'm still really bad about collaborating with other people and really being, I'm very much a lone wolf by nature, and I'm like on my island, and I just, I'll just eat shit for a while and get things done, and I'll figure things out the hard way, which isn't necessarily the best way. Fast forward to today, if I could go back in time, I would absolutely tell my younger self exactly that. Like, it's good that you're willing to put in the work and you're willing to figure things out on your own, which is fantastic, but it is a lot easier and it's more fun and enjoyable when you do incorporate other people. The flip side of that, I would say, is the people that I do see in some of these groups, or even people that reach out to me, is they are so about collaboration and trying to reach out to others and kind of get help and figure out the cheat code and whatever the quick hack is. But they have no substance in terms of like, they're not actually executing the work. They're not actually putting in insights into the group. If it's like a group setting, right? They're only extracting and they're not adding to the conversation. Yeah. So if you do decide to get help early on, be a person of substance, do your homework, like even little things like, for example, I sent somebody an email today. I'm like, hey, you should really I recommend you start doing conversation ads. Like, don't ask me what a conversation ad is. Go to Google and search conversation ad, and you'll literally see what it is in 2 seconds. And then if you really want more information and you do your research, you'll notice I have a 50-minute tutorial video on how to set up conversation ads. So like taking the initiative is so important, because a lot of folks that don't find success, they're not resourceful and they're not putting in the time to just do these little things. And if in the future you are lucky enough to find somebody that sees something in you and is willing to invest in you as like a mentor, all the people that I've had in my life that are mentors were almost kind of like an unofficial mentor. It was never like an agreed upon thing, but they would toss me some advice and then I would go execute it. And I would come back to them and say like, hey, I did X, Y, Z. Here's how it went. Just want to let you know. And then they see, oh, wow, this guy's putting in the work. I'm going to invest more in him. I'm going to give him the next step. And that's over time. If you can do that, you'll move so much faster, because if you're a really smart person, it's going to be even harder for you than if you were not a smart person. Because what I found with smart people is they're almost too smart for their own good, and they won't just trust the process. They have to find the optimal process, the best process, like the V20.2. And it's like, I can tell them something as basic as like, create content on LinkedIn and post 5 times a week and send 10 connection requests a day with your ideal customer. And then they'll be like, okay, sounds good. And then they go away and they're like, how do I automate my connection requests? I gotta use like Phantom Buster, this and that. Oh, if I'm gonna create content, I need to have 36 hook templates and the best formatting. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they just kind of go off. And then it's like 6 months later and they haven't made one single post. So don't get in your own way. The biggest thing in the beginning, more than anything, like the tactical execution is the easy part. It's the stuff that you need to do, but you're not doing. 90% of it in the beginning is your mindset and getting that right, so that you get out of your own way and allow yourself to do the work that will actually create the results. It's so easy, especially in the beginning, to fall into the trap of consuming like motivational content on YouTube and all these inspirational tutorials and audiobooks and ebooks and all this. You're just consuming all this knowledge, and like you have like this level 10 mentality. All these things. People will talk to you about this jargon and all this stuff, but then you look at your reality and it doesn't reflect the person you think you are. And it's not until you live those things that you actually become that person.
We're going to take a quick moment to pause this episode and thank our sponsors. Firstly, we've got the first sponsor, which is True Classic, the clothing company. As you all know from all of my content, I've been wearing True Classic for the last 18 months, and it truly is the staple of my wardrobe. What I find is that a lot of the clothes that I buy previously were all too baggy. They didn't fit right. The best part about True Classic, not only is it incredibly soft, but for those of you that have broader shoulders, that have larger arms, who just tend to be a little bit more athletic, the fit is absolutely amazing. It makes you look great. And a lot of people call these really the push-up bras for guys. I can tell you, when you wear these t-shirts, you look good. If you're interested in trying True Classic, there's going to be a link in the description of this episode. There's going to be my personal link, or you can go to trueclassics.com/thechrisroach. Go ahead, check out the store. I guarantee you, you will not be sorry if you start wearing True Classics. If you do end up purchasing them, please let me know what you purchased. I'm curious to hear feedback. Moving on to our second sponsor, which is the Independent Marketer, which is an online course and community that I've created to be able to teach digital marketers how to go out and break out of the golden handcuffs and ultimately launch either their own freelancing career or build it into their own digital marketing agency. In the description is going to be a link to that course. And as a thank you for listening to this podcast, there's going to be a special $100 discount on that course as well. If you do have any questions on that, please feel free to reach out to me directly or shoot me a message on LinkedIn. Back to the episode. Yeah, the analysis paralysis is such a large component of what a lot of marketers face, is being able to actually go out and you have to execute. And all marketers, they know how to look at the analytics. They can look at the statistics. You can see what the click-through rate influencers had. You know how to do all of this, and that's great. You can sit there, you can make hypotheses, we can continue to test things. Absolutely, you can do it. But when you go from being a marketer to an entrepreneur and a business owner, you can't just sit and pontificate about what you're going to do. You have to actually execute, and you have to execute outside of just your lane. And that's something where I think a lot of marketers struggle to make that transition, is when you become an agency owner or a consultant or an entrepreneur, you're no longer just a marketer. You have to wear all of the hats. How did you deal with that transition?
I think first is just from like the highest level, from the mindset, is understand that nothing is beneath you. When you're the entrepreneur, you're the captain of the ship, and it's your job. Most of the time, the job of the entrepreneur is just understanding and prioritizing, like, what are the areas of the business that you need to focus on so that you can get it to a certain place. And then once it's smooth sailing, whatever that might be, maybe that's as simple as just like document certain processes. On a larger scale, it's like investing in hiring certain leaders to run those functions. But a lot of your job is just identifying what are the major priorities right now across the business, and then going in and fixing it and making it work and getting it to a certain point. And then you can kind of look up, you look left, you look right, you're like, where's my next priority, right? And depending on your stage of growth as a company, there's going to be different priorities. So it's just being really honest with yourself and understanding that you have 24 hours in the day. Yeah. And it doesn't matter what the task is. If it needs to be done, at the end of the day, it's your responsibility, especially if you're just the only person running the ship. And it's one of my favorite things about entrepreneurship is it forces you to grow as a person. It will expose your weaknesses and limitations. So the business will only grow to your level of development. Mm-hmm. And, going back to the example, like nothing's beneath you. For example, right now, I'm in the process of launching the academy, and ultimately I want to build an LMS. So I want to have software involved into the process because I'm a big believer in courses are a means to an end, and I want to create experiences over just individual courses. But that means I need to build software. So that means I need to learn about software. So that means I need to learn enough to be able to delegate it successfully. So that means I got to learn HTML, CSS, JavaScript. I got to understand how to read code bases. I got to get involved in developer forums. You know what I mean? Like I could easily say, oh, I'm not a developer. That's not my skill set, and just kind of write it off. But no, that is what is required. So I have to step up and meet that expectation. I don't have to become the best developer in the world, but I need to know enough so that when I do hire an engineering manager in the future, I know if they're doing a good job or not. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes on the marketing space, you as a marketer, I think you have an advantage over other folks that are starting in entrepreneurship because you understand about acquisition and sales, which is arguably the two most important things outside of product for any company. So you already have a leg up. So now it's really just a matter of understanding product. Can you build great products that ideally market themselves, that are that have a high retention, understanding accounting and metrics and finance. I think that's a huge area of weakness for most entrepreneurs. Mm-hmm. But just understanding the basics, like what is an income statement, a balance sheet, etc. So whenever you come across an area in your business, and it's going to happen fast, where you don't know how to do it, when you're just starting out, it's a matter of you asking yourself two things. Number one, who understands this in my network that I can tap into? That's like the shortcut. If you have that option, fantastic. Or B, where can I find resources to learn this thing, right? And this is just as simple as going to Google and then going down the rabbit hole of trying to find like who's the person to learn from on that topic. But it's all out there, for us for the taking.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. There's a lot of holes that people have in their understanding before making that jump, and trying to fill those holes as quickly as possible is really going to allow you to be a better entrepreneur. As you've made that transition, this is your second transition now, actually becoming a consultant. What is your goal with this consultancy? Are you looking to build it into more of a company? Would you consider yourself a solopreneur right now?
Yeah, very much a solopreneur right now with the consultancy. The goal for me really is the consultancy is twofold. So it's one, the consultancy is great because it provides cash flow, so like at the baseline, and the cash flow allows me to bootstrap the launch of the academy. So that's the one function of the consultancy. And then the second one is it's really fun and it's cool because all the stuff that I'm developing for the academy, like these frameworks, these templates, all these different things, I get to test with my clients. So they're almost like, for lack of a better word, I mess with them. I call them my guinea pigs. And we're like messing around because I get to test all this stuff with them, and they're super happy to test it because they get first access and like first dibs. And it's just like this self-fulfilling feedback loop, which is amazing. So that's kind of the big value out of the consultancy. But ultimately, over time, the goal is to be full-time in the academy and, acquiring students and doing all that stuff.
Awesome. So let's talk about making that transition from previous company to becoming a consultant. Would you mind providing a bit of a context as to where you were, for those that don't know, before starting this consultancy firm?
Yeah, so before this, I was actually working full time. I decided to become a W-2 again, and I was working for a company called Metadata. Mm-hmm. And during my time there in those 2 years, I was the head of performance marketing, and then I eventually became the head of product innovation. So worked closely with clients, built a performance marketing team. They're almost like, think internal agency at the company, helping clients run ad campaigns. So built that team. On the product side, helped build the platform, worked with our data science team on the algorithm. So did a lot of cool stuff. And, a lot of people will hear that, especially if they're like diehard entrepreneurs, they're like, oh, no, I would never go back to being an employee. And I hear you, like me now is like, for sure, I'll never go back to being an employee. But again, it goes back to being honest with yourself and understanding where you are, where you want to be, and what are the gaps. For me personally, knowing where I wanted to be, I knew I wanted to do this academy years ago. I've always had the itch, but I knew for me to get to the level required, I had to go through the experience of working at a fast-growing startup like this and building teams and working in product and helping build AI and doing all these things that I would have never been exposed to. Because it's like one thing to know how to manage ad campaigns, but it's a whole other thing to know how to automate it and build it into a product and a platform, and to work with engineers and product managers. It's like a whole other level, you know what I mean? And it's such a unique opportunity. So it kind of goes back to, again, being honest with yourself and doing what is required, not what is your like quote unquote best. You have to rise up to the occasion. So it was very methodical of like why I joined, and it was like very mutual like benefits and all that. So that's what I was doing before. Got to the point where company was in a really good spot. Performance marketing team that's also the best thing in the world, by the way, as a leader, when you get to the point where your team gets so good where they don't even need you anymore. Or like in Slack, you see them answering each other's questions, and you're just there like, oh, hey guys, if you need anything, let me know. I'm here. That's like the best feeling in the world. And I was always like a diehard lone wolf solopreneur, but actually going through this experience really allowed me to see the value and like how cool it is to work with people and build a team and build something bigger than yourself. And this again goes back to like, what is the end goal, right? Reverse engineering. What are you trying to do? So for me now, like, and I think for the most part, most entrepreneurs go through this cycle. Like in the beginning, you're just trying to meet your needs, like Maslow hierarchy of needs, right? You're just trying to pay the bills, right? And then from there, you're trying to get some level of attainment. Like, thankfully, I'm at the point now where it's like, I'm okay, like regardless. Mm-hmm. So now it's a matter of building this thing that I think would actually benefit the world. So that's kind of the journey I went through.
That's awesome. It's an interesting journey. I was curious, why you made the transition back into W-2, having been a consultant and kind of had a taste of what it was like to be an entrepreneur, to then make the transition back into. Because again, I personally, I've actually never had a W-2. I've always been a 1099 and entrepreneur. So it's something that I've always sworn that I would never do it, and I guess time will tell. But so far, it's not looking particularly likely that I'll end up going that way.
I think I think everything in extreme could be bad. On the flip side of that, I know a lot of folks that they'll tell me like, oh, I want to be self-employed. I want to do my own thing, but I just need to learn some more. And they almost use that as like a crutch, where they keep thinking somebody else is going to give them the learning and the experience and the knowledge. And the truth is that's just not the reality. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, experience and the ability to produce outcomes are not correlated. I could have 1 year experience, but in that 1 year, I actually grew 7 times because I was pushing myself and stretching my zone of genius, while somebody else has been doing the same thing that they found out in year 1 repeated over 7 years, and they haven't really grown. So that would be the trap, I would say. If you guys are listening to this and you're like, oh, I just gotta wait until I'm a VP of marketing so I'm ready, or all these things, and you're like kind of lying to yourself, just be honest.
Yeah.
Like the only reason I did it was because it was like a very unique situation. But if it wasn't for that, I would absolutely not have done it.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people that listen to this that are looking at making the transition that really are scared to make the transition of what it comes into. There's a lot of people that think they have to hit some arbitrary job title to be able to then justify that you're then going to be a consultant, or work in marketing for 10 years to then be able to justify charging. But you can figure it out pretty quickly, and it's actually amazing when you do make that jump, just how quickly you figure out how to do something where if you don't, you will lose that client. So suddenly there's a lot of pressure for you to do it. It's amazing how much quicker you get at learning things and producing outcomes when your financial well-being depends on it. Whereas for a lot of those that work in a company, it doesn't really matter as much. You're not going to get fired over that one little thing, but it's very easy to end a contract with most agencies. The agencies tend to have a very high turnover. So if you're going to get into that industry, you've got to make sure that you're comfortable not only with the line of business and the expectations with that, but also in how to retain clients, because that's the key to growth, is retaining clients over a long time period. Clients that come in for 2 or 3 months, it's neither good for you or them. You want to have a long-term relationships with all of your clients.
100,000,000% agree. And it's, I always tell new advertisers that the best way to learn how to advertise is to spend your own money. And the same is true for most marketing disciplines. If you want to get better, you're a social media manager, great. Create your own social media pages and manage it on your own. If you want to be a SEO expert and you want to do SEO at companies, great. Start your own blog and try to rank on Google. That is the way you're going to get real experience, learning on your own, and then being able to apply it in a situation to be able to get feedback. One of the most challenging things about learning how to run ads is the way you get feedback is spending money. And when I was first starting out, I had no money. So I had all this knowledge of things that I was learning, but I didn't have a way of actually applying it and getting feedback. And that's where it's really helpful. If you do work at a company, you can, your first goal, in my opinion, when you're starting out, is income should be the second thing you prioritize. The first thing you should be prioritizing is developing skills. I'm like a true believer in that quote, you have to become so good that they can't ignore you. And there's always room for people at the top in terms of skill development. And what you think that is usually a lot less than what you think it is because of imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
But in the beginning, really focus on becoming good at your craft so that when you do start to work with clients, you can actually help them and you know how to deliver and get results for them. And at the very minimum, if you're just starting out and you feel like you have very little skills, but arguably you against the client, you're a little bit further along in the journey, just be upfront with the client and just tell them like, hey, I'm relatively new at this. I'm willing to help you out with this. As long as you're cool with that, let's work together. And oftentimes in the beginning, clients respect that. And they know just because you care and you're willing to put in the work, that's enough for them to give you a chance and you can get it started, start building work, get real experience, get a case study, and then it just kind of expands from there,
And most entrepreneurs will reflect that in their pricing. Most people charge way too less when they start out with, so it's pretty obvious if you're just starting out or not, based on what you're charging for a client. If clients come in to talk to you to handle a large account and you're charging $1,000 a month, they know that you're inexperienced. It's pretty obvious. So I do think there's something to learn with the perceived value of what you do charge for when you do get to the point of pricing, just to be aware if what you charge does reflect the value. So a lot of people, I think, do have that hesitation to really charge what they're probably worth to do that. But the second thing, I would say, I personally, when I first started the agency, when I had my first 1 or 2 clients, I knew the clients already. They were from my existing existing network, existing relationships. So I was able to say, listen, I'm starting the agency. I've done this before. I think I can help you. Why don't we have a conversation with that? And I've actually still got all of those clients today. But again, they've kind of been grandfathered in because when you first start, you charge less, you bring them in. It's something to as you get more experience, you will learn that you can charge a lot more than when you just first start out.
And in my experience too, newcomers, myself included, I went through this. When you struggle to charge adequately, that's usually the symptom of a greater problem, which is you don't truly understand the value you're bringing to the table.
Yeah.
when you really understand the value you're bringing to the table, it's very easy to set your price. If I know I'm going to be able to help you to produce $100,000 in revenue in the next 6 months, for me to ask you for $5,000, it's not a big deal because I understand the return that's going to come. So really dialing in your focus on a niche when you're first starting out, so you can truly understand the pain points of that market, the average deal size, right? So they have the financial capital to be able to invest in you. All these things are really important before you even get to setting pricing terms so that you can set a reasonable price. But the better you understand the market, the niche, the pain points, the ACV, the average contract value, then from there, it's easier for you to kind of get a sense of like, okay, maybe I should start charging this versus that because it's relative to the market that you're solving. But in the beginning, most people are, and it is what it is because we need money and we're like in this state of stress, et cetera, where we just take on whoever we can. But if you can allow yourself the flexibility to have, 6 to 12 month runway and savings, and then really get to focus in on one niche, really learn that niche. You don't have to be married to the niche forever. And that's always the hardest part in the beginning is like, what do you choose? But anything that has a need and it has the means, and then ideally something that you enjoy, that's like the perfect trinity. But choose that niche, really learn them so that when you speak to these people as well, you can speak to them as if you were in their industry. So for example, when I talk to a SaaS startup and I'm talking to them things about like, CAC payback and MRR, and I'm talking about scaling pipeline and generating demand and revenue, these are all jargony words that are very unique to that industry. Just based on the way I speak and the words I use, they'll already see me as an expert in their mind, and I'll be able to command a higher price versus if I'm like vaguely understanding their industry and I'm saying things like, I'm going to help you get a higher ROAS and increase your average order value. That's very specific to e-commerce. So if I tell a SaaS person that, they're going to be like, yeah, I can see you're not really the guy or the girl if you're a girl talking to them. So that's, I would say, very helpful context.
Yeah, absolutely. And and if you're in the luxury where you've got 12 months runway, absolutely. I don't know a lot of marketers that are looking to make that transition that have 12 months runway to do that. And that's where, again, start building on the side. There's nothing to say that 12 months where you want to take that 12-month period. You don't have to be doing it full time. You can be doing it on the side. You can start to build it up. And then from there, once you get your expenses covered, you can absolutely make that transition. And if you're at a point where you feel comfortable to be able to do that. What I'd like to ask you as we're kind of coming up on time here, Silvio, is if you're looking to start an agency, if you're a marketer that's been laid off, what kind of advice would you give to someone that is in that position that wants to make that leap into entrepreneurship now for you, having done this twice already?
Number one thing I would say, and the biggest trap we fall into in the beginning, again, because we're just in that state of scarcity, and this is also too where if you can give yourself some runway, amazing, is in the beginning, your whole focus and your obsession really is how do I acquire clients? You'll be going to Google, you'll be searching how to acquire customers, how to acquire clients on YouTube. That's like all you're searching, and you're trying to find everything under the sun, the latest hack, the latest secret on, is it Facebook ads, is it SEO, whatever. Just that's your obsession. If I could go back in time, I would tell myself then, stop focusing on how to acquire clients and start focusing on how can I build relationships. And it sounds so fluffy, airy-fairy in the sky, but I swear it is a game changer. Just get focused on who is the best person that you can help, right? What is that niche? In the beginning, if you're not really sure at all, just choose 2 or 3. So at least you have some sort of focus in your marketing. And then start to connect with those people on LinkedIn, if they're on LinkedIn or wherever they hang out online. But assuming they're on LinkedIn, for most folks, LinkedIn is a good spot. And start to build relationships. Connect with them. Don't pitch them right away, right? Like, don't be sending out the latest LinkedIn cold DM script that everybody's using and then automating it with like Ulink or something like that. Like, do things right. Think of yourself. How would you want to be treated? And really just focus on building those relationships. It might seem slow at first, but it's like sometimes you have to take 2 steps back to take 3 steps forward. And when you build relationships and that's your focus in the beginning, it compounds and it scales on top of each other versus when the focus is, how can I get clients now? You're very quick to burn bridges and do short-term tactics that you might think you're moving faster, but you're actually moving slower in the long run.
Mm-hmm. No, that's good advice, but it's a fine balance because if you've just been laid off and you need to make income, a long-term approach can be more intimidating to invest in. And I think that's the fact. To be fair, that's the balance that I think a lot of companies are facing right now. Is, as we've seen the macroeconomics, do you go into creating all of these, very much top of funnel marketing campaigns, basically lead generation, because it's going to fill up the pipeline right now, or do you continue to invest in these more of a demand generation campaigns that are obviously longer term investments? This is a very hot topic right now because of everything that we're seeing that's going on in the economy. But as a market that's making that jump, it can be very difficult to sit there and go, right, I'm going to produce content on LinkedIn for 3 months and hope that's going to bring me a client, rather than cold DMing, picking up the phone, trying to close deals, trying to sell, which to me, I always think go and get your first 2 clients straight away, because it gives you breathing room. And then you can start to be a little bit more picky with the type of clients that you want to work with. Because again, if you're losing money every month, it's a lot of stress on not only your financial situation, but your mental health, your physical health. It's draining if you're losing money every month.
Totally. And, when I say build relationships, that means you're outreaching to people, right? So you're connecting with them, you're talking to them. It's, at the end of the day, it's not what you do, but it's how you do it. Mm-hmm. It's the level of the execution that makes the difference. And, even with companies that I talk to right now with the economy, and they want to invest money and they need to meet the needs of today, but also prepare for the needs of tomorrow. If you just got laid off from your job, which obviously is terrible, there's really 2 options. And this is depending on your situation. If you have no money and you just got laid off, your best bet is most likely to get another job, unless you really are confident that you can land something within that time frame. Mm-hmm. And this is kind of where, if you can lean on people like Chris, that they have strategies and tactics to help you to be able to do that, then fantastic. But you have to be realistic with yourself in the sense of, will I be able to make the gap through getting 2 clients in this time frame that I have?
Yeah.
Or assuming worst case, you have no runway, well then maybe you're probably better off getting another job for now, and then you can build that runway, that savings, and then do this on the side. And then in terms of getting the job, it's the same approach like if you were trying to get clients for yourself. You can connect with them on LinkedIn, depending on your skill set and the gap that you're trying to fill. You can do a teardown of their website if you're trying to, be the web operations manager. If you're an SEO person, you can do a crawl of their site and try to help them with how they can rank better. You can add value first to those companies and pitch them for a full-time position. Just like flip side of that, if you weren't trying to get a job, you would probably do something similar to land them as a client.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. And it's, if you can target a small list of companies that you want to land as clients, just imagine you're applying for jobs for them, because the amount of extra work people will go to in a job application process is crazy. Everyone's building reports, they're doing analysis. If you're looking specifically on the paid marketing side of things, they're doing forecasts for them. They've got entire marketing, strategy and recommendations for them. And yet to go and pitch a company, they want to get paid to do that right out of the gate. It's actually, it can be very similar. So I think that's great advice. Yeah. Hey, Silvio, for those that have enjoyed the podcast and want to learn more about you, they want to sign up for the newsletter that you have, they want to connect with you, where would be the best place for them to find you?
Yeah, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. Just search my name, Silvio Perez. And then if you want to sign up to my newsletter and be notified of when the Academy releases, then just go to adconversion.com, and more than happy to have you there. Awesome.
Well, thank you very much for coming on the Acronym Podcast. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
And that concludes this episode. If you have any questions, please head into the comments where you'll find all of the available links. If you have any questions on our sponsors, all the links will be in the description. Please stay tuned for the next episode.